Hi, my name is Shirapan. I'm an accounting SME with Bista Solutions. Today, I'm going to take you through the fixed asset management functionality in the accounting app V16 of Odoo Enterprise Edition. Before we touch the accounting functionality for fixed asset management on the system, I would like you to visit this flow chart with me. It's a simple one, and it's been divided into four swim lanes. Let me expand my screen. So it's been divided into four swim lanes. The first swim lane, which is color coded in teal, is from a company perspective and it is not covered in Odoo. The other three swim lanes are from a system perspective and are covered on Odoo. When we speak of fixed asset management from a company's perspective, what the higher management needs to do is it needs to define its asset classes or asset categories or classes may include buildings, furniture and fixtures, vehicles. Apart from that, once they've done that, they need to define recognition criteria for fixed assets. Recognition criteria are criteria which transactions have to qualify in order to be capitalized. At this stage, they also might need to create or define a materiality level beyond which assets are capitalized and underneath which the transactions are simply expensed out. Once this has been done, the management will create internal policy for fixed assets, which will cover the accounting and the operations. They need to circulate this policy to their relevant employees, especially the finance department, who would need to know how to account for the different classes and different types of fixed assets. Once this has been done and the management is comfortable with their accounting and operational policy for fixed assets, they would be in a position to configure the fixed asset management functionality on Odoo. The first thing that needs to be done on Odoo while configuring fixed asset management functionality is the definition of chart of accounts so that it reflects the different classes of assets. So we would have to create separate accounts, fixed asset accounts, depreciation accounts, and accumulated depreciation accounts for the various classes of fixed assets that are within the company. Once that has been done, we need to create models for the various classes of assets. And once we've created the models, we need to decide whether we want to go for automation or whether we want to create our assets manually. If we want to go for automation in Odoo, we need to decide whether we would be creating our assets in draft mode and reviewing them, or whether Odoo would be creating and accounting for the assets automatically without any human intervention. So this is the configuration part of it. Once this has been done, we move on to the operations. When the company buys a fixed asset, the vendor will submit a bill. That bill needs to be coded into Odoo uh, as a vendor bill. And once it has been coded into one of the fixed asset accounts that we created during the configuration, depending on whether we have selected and which type of automation we've selected, Odoo will either create fixed assets in draft mode or will create assets automatically. However, if we've not selected automation, we would have to create the assets manually. When we create assets manually, once the vendor bill has been entered, we need to go to the asset forms and provide certain information during asset creation. This would normally include the model that needs to be utilized, the depreciation method, the pro rata method, the various dates like the acquisition date and the pro rata date, the acquisition amount, and the fixed assets accounts, including the accumulated depreciation and the expense account. Once this has been done, we can review the asset that's being created along with the depreciation and confirm its creation. Uh, so this is the operational part of it. Now, what every finance team needs to do at month end or at closing is they need to ensure that all the entries that have been posted by Odoo in respect of fixed assets are properly reflected in the accounts. Fixed asset management in Odoo provides you two reports, namely the depreciation schedule and the asset register, in order for us to be able to verify the transactions that have been posted in the system. Apart from that, we can also utilize the general ledger or the P&L and the balance sheet to ensure that the assets are properly reflected and their status on the financial statements. Now that we've looked at the concept of fixed asset management from a company's perspective as well as that from a system's perspective, let's head back to Odoo. So, without waiting any longer, let's dive into the accounting application. Before we start, there are a couple of things that we need to configure for the fixed asset functionality to work properly. The first thing that we need to do is define our chart of accounts. We'll do that just now. We look at what the default chart of accounts or the current chart of accounts has in terms of fixed assets. So I'll just select by type, and we do have a couple of classes. So the accounts in my chart of accounts should normally reflect the different kinds or classes of assets that I have in my business or in my company. We'll just create a new account for another class. Let's go with 153,000 for my vehicles. The type of account is going to be fixed assets. I'll create an accumulated depreciation account in the same series to go with the fixed asset account. So this is not mandatory. You could always have your depreciation and your fixed asset acquisition amount accounted into your fixed asset account, but I always prefer to have an accumulated depreciation account. So we have accumulated depreciation for our vehicles. Then we'll check if there's a depreciation account in my chart of accounts which could hold my depreciation on the P&L side, right? So we have a common depreciation account, which basically means that the depreciation pertaining to all my fixed assets is going to reside in one account on my P&L, which is going to be depreciation with the type depreciation. Moving on, the second order of business is to update my asset models. The asset models basically dictate the way depreciation is going to be applied across my different classes. So I'll create an asset model for my vehicles. There are various methods available to me when I'm defining my asset models. We'll go with the straight line method. We do have declining and declining, then straight line in Odoo as well. Let's go with straight line for now. Then I'll select the useful life of the asset. It could be in years or it could be in months. We'll go with the default, but let's go with months. So 5 years is 60 months. And for computation, we have these possible computation methods. So you have prorata and no prorata. In no prorata, you would have uh, equal depreciation across all periods, irrespective of when the asset was acquired, whether it was acquired at the start of the period or in the middle of the period. For pro rata methods, you have two types, the constant periods and the based on days per period. In the constant period, you would have similar or equal periods, so you would have 12 months within the year, which would and 12 equal months, and all the years would have the same number of days, so equal years as well. In based on days per period, you would have different number of days, actual number of days for the number of for a different month. So in February you would have 28 days, in January you would have 31, so on and so forth, and in a leap year you would have one extra day. So this method utilizes actual days in the period, in the period. So we'll go with constant periods for the purposes of our demo. In the depreciation account, we have to mention the accumulated depreciation for our class of asset. So we'll go with the accumulated depreciation vehicles account that we just updated in our chart of accounts. And for the expense side, we'll go with the depreciation account, which is common across all the classes of assets. For journal, we could have a separate journal for fixed assets. We'll just go with the miscellaneous operations journal. We'll save our model. Once we've saved our model, the system is in a position to utilize the model for all assets that would be defined under this class. In order to bring automation, the next step that we need to do is go back into our chart of accounts, into the vehicles account, and go to the setup and click on the automation tab. So once you enter the automation tab, you have a couple of ways you could go about when configuring your fixed assets or automation. With the no, you have to create your assets manually. We can still utilize the model, but there's no automation. With create in draft, uh, an asset is created in draft mode utilizing the model, but the user has the option of reviewing the asset, and once they are comfortable, they can post or confirm the asset, and the system will account for it accordingly. Lastly, we have the create and validate option, which is complete automation, and the system will automatically create and account for the asset. Then there's the option of managed items. With managed item, what the system does is it allows for multiple assets. If you have uh, more than one quantity on a bill line, so if you have a bill line with two, three, or four quantity, one single bill line with multiple quantities, the system will create that number of assets rather than one assets. If you do not select this, no matter what the quantity on your bill line is, it will create one asset. So let's go with managed items. Then you have the asset model. Since we've created one for vehicles, we'll select that over here and save our automation. What this will do is every time when I create a bill that is coded into this account, the vehicles or the fixed asset accounts for vehicles, an asset or multiple assets will be created automatically. So let's go into our bills now. We'll just create a bill. Let's select a vendor. I'll go with required date. I'll select a date. Let's go in the past, assuming the system is not locked. I'll go with 15th of March. I'll update accounting date, and we'll add a line to our bill. Let's go with the Corolla, and let's select the fixed asset account, which would be vehicles in our case. Select the quantity. So remember, we ticked the managed items checkbox. So now if we select 3 over here, it will create 3 assets. However, had we not ticked that checkbox, it would have created one asset, even if we had mentioned 3 over here. I'll remove the taxes. I'll give an appropriate price. So we have 3 items. Let's go with 12,000, and that will come to a total of 36,000. Remove the product since we don't need one in this case. Goods. And save. Now you will see once I'm coding my bill into the vehicles account, once I confirm my bill, I will get 3 assets defined over here. Let's wait for the system. There you go. So we have defined three assets, and this is the automation working, right? So this is complete automation. Uh, let's go into our assets and see what the system has done. The system has created 3 assets as we assumed it would, because we had selected managed items and we mentioned 3 over here. The total value of the assets was 36,000, but I forgot to remove the purchase taxes, so it comes to 41,400. If we look at our assets, all of them are defined at 12,000 each, right, which is a total of 36,000. If we open up one of them, uh, so the asset model we selected on the chart of accounts in the vehicles account has been utilized, and it has picked all the values that we created while we were creating the asset model. Next, we can see the depreciation board. So the value of the assets was 36,000 and 12,000 each. Since we have 60 months, dividing 12,000 by 60 months comes to $200 per month depreciation. The first month has a different depreciation because the asset was acquired mid-month in the month of March. So you have lesser depreciation in the first month. The asset form will also tell you which bills have been tagged in order to create this fixed asset. So we can see that the total value was 36,000 for this bill and the asset that has been created. So 3 assets were created and one of them is 12,000. The acquisition date will match the date on the bill which was utilized to create these assets. Of course, you have the option of selecting a different date to start your depreciation. So, if I wanted my depreciation to start from the month of April, I would select the 1st of April over here. Okay, apart from this, as you can see from your depreciation board, two of the depreciation months have already passed, right? So right now we are in the month of May while I'm making this demo. So 2 months have passed and the system realizes this and has posted both these entries automatically. And as we go forward, when the month of May finishes or June finishes, the system will automatically post the relevant entries as well. If you wanted to look at these entries, we can click over here, or we could go to the journal entries. We can select miscellaneous entries, and we will see that all the draft entries pertaining to fixed assets appear over here. The fixed asset that we just created was a Corolla, so we'll select by Corolla using the reference filter. And we'll see that all the depreciation entries pertaining to my three Corolla cars appear over here. I could look at the posted entries, and I'll see that for the three vehicles, the first 2 months have been posted, right? So the month of March and April, since they've already gone by, have been posted in the system. Similarly, if I wanted to look at the reporting that the accounting app provides in respect of fixed assets, I could look at the fixed asset registers, which you could visit at by clicking the assets in the accounting menu under management. So you have the fixed asset register over here. This shows you the name of the asset, its original value, the acquisition date, the depreciation method that has been utilized, the book value after the depreciation, and the status of the fixed asset. So in case it's still in the draft mode, it will tell you draft, and if it's been confirmed and it shows running, it means that the depreciation is getting posted. The second important report in respect of fixed asset is the depreciation schedule, which you could visit by clicking on the reporting menu and going to depreciation schedule under management. This report basically shows you the various fixed assets and the depreciation pertaining to them, along with their acquisition value and book value. So if I were to look at my Corolla cars, the three that I just recognized in the book, it shows in our books, it shows you the acquisition date, which is the 15th of March for all of them. The first depreciation, which could be different, but is the 31st of March in our case. It could be 1st of April had I selected pro rata date, which was different from my acquisition date. That would have been the case. It shows me the method of depreciation, which is linear in our case, or straight line method. Then we have the asset columns. So we have the beginning balance at the beginning of the period. So this is the report for April of 2023. So this column shows me the opening value for my assets or my Corolla cars at the beginning of April 2023. Then if there are any changes within my fixed asset, they would show up as additions and or deletions. Then there's the closing value for my fixed assets, which basically is my opening value plus any additions and minus any deletions. We also have the depreciation columns over here. Again, we have the opening value, the additions for the month, and any deletions in case we sell or dispose of our assets, and then we have the closing depreciation amount. At the end of the report, we have the last column is for book value, which basically shows assets at the end of the period minus my depreciation at the end of the period, and we come up with our book value as of April 2023. So this is the depreciation schedule. Apart from this, we have a couple of other functionalities when we are considering fixed assets in Odoo version 16. If I go back to my assets report and click on one of my cars, you will see that there is a modify depreciation button over here. What this does is it allows you to change the depreciation of your fixed asset in certain cases, right? So in case you wanted to pause your depreciation, which normally happens when you mark your asset as a held for sale asset, in which case it's no longer used in operations, you would want to pause its depreciation. Then you could be reevaluating depreciation. For instance, the carrying value of your fixed asset does not reflect your market value. In that case, you would have to reevaluate your fixed asset. You could be selling your fixed asset. When you sell your fixed asset, you basically dispose of your fixed asset against certain consideration, in which case you would be booking loss or profit. Then you could dispose of your fixed asset, in which case you are writing off your fixed asset at book value. So these are certain some of the options in which the system allows you to modify your depreciation or modify your asset. In addition to these standard reports or reports pertaining to fixed assets, we can also track our fixed assets and their status on the balance sheet and profit and loss. So if I go to my profit and loss, I can look at my depreciation for my Corolla cars by clicking on the depreciation account and going to the journal ledger. We can see that the depreciation for my Corolla cars appears over here. This is for the month of April, while these are entries for the month of March. Right, and like we said that in the month of April we had a depreciation of $200, while in the month of March, since we acquired the assets mid-month, the depreciation is lesser. Similarly, if we were to visit our balance sheet, we would be able to see our fixed assets under the fixed asset head and under the vehicles head. I'll click on the journal ledgers and a breakup of my vehicles would be available over here. So we can see that the bill which I utilize for creating my fixed asset appears over here, and it would be showing me the total value of 36,000, which means 12,000 for each of my Corolla cars. Secondly, I can also look at my accumulated depreciation against my vehicles by clicking on the accumulated depreciation and the journal ledger. Right, so against all my vehicles, all my three vehicles, I have entries in the month of March and April, and they would be 200 for April, while they would be lesser for the month of March. So you have 200 for April and 109 each for March. So this is how basically the fixed asset functionality works in the accounting module in version 16 of the Enterprise Edition. In case you have any questions pertaining to fixed assets, please reach out to Vista Solutions on the contact information provided on our website. Thank you so much.